Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Contract, a Commander podcast. I'm Mike Almond, and joining me is my co-host, Alex Lapp. Alex! What's up, man?
Not too much, Mike, and honestly, our cup overfloweth. This is a heck of a set review that we're about to do here.
I feel like we've got some very devoted listeners, but I see a set like this, and then I'm like, man, are there just people listening that I just don't know about? Because holy cow, I feel like they're hearing us.
Which is funny,
Alex,
because they made this set probably before we even recorded our first episode.
Right. Because what is it, like 2.5 years or something like that? That they usually say.
I don't know their actual turnaround time, but
right.
I mean, they weren't listening to us asking for more political cards in the past year or two.
Right. So here's the thing. Normally when we do a set review, talking about the cards that we like as the social contract, cards that encourage a lot of game within the game kind of mechanics, whether that's group hug, group slug, chaos, stack, things that we're doing a lot of interacting with not just the actual battlefield itself, but with the players. Normally when we get a set review like that, we're talking somewhere between like 12 and 25 cards or something like that.
Yeah.
This one, we've got a list of 50. So this is your forewarning, everybody. This is either going to be a very long episode or it's going to be 2 episodes.
It's probably
either way. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Because you and I am like, I've already put aside 10 minutes for one card that I'm just going to,
I don't know who wants to listen to a 3-hour set review when they could listen to two 2-hour set reviews.
I mean,
that's probably close to what it's going to end up being here.
Yeah, this one.
They're strapping.
You know what? Let's stop talking about the things that are going to happen, and let's start talking about the actual thing happening. So, this is Commander Legends 2 in Baldur's Gate, kind of. What's going on here? I'm out of the loop. Help me out with this set.
I mean, what do you mean, Mike? What do you want from me?
Where are we? How is this happening? Why do we have 50 cards that we're going to talk about? Because I'm excited, but I'm confused.
It's probably just the flavor of the set, right? Because New Capenna is this sort of, what would you call it, Art Deco, old Hollywood, Golden Age, monsters wheeling and dealing style set from, I think it's set in a parallel 1920s, 1930s kind of area in America, and they're really heavily leaning into the organized crime, city life aspect, and apparently that means politics and lots of them. Lots of
new guild names.
3 colors.
Commanders. 3 colors coming out with those. It's pretty exciting. And without further ado, we start with Wooburg. Why don't we start with white here? And why don't you go ahead and give me our first card?
Sure. My first card here is a Damning Verdict, which is a 3 white 5 mana for a sorcery. Destroy all creatures with no counters on them. This is your pretty bog standard whiteboard wipe. We've seen this kind of thing before. We hit all non-tokens. We can hit creatures above or below a certain power. White has a large amount of board wipes of many different kinds, so this makes perfect sense. If you're running a counters deck, +1/+1, -1/-1, ability counters, anything like that, infects, experience, pretty much anything that involves counters on creatures, you're going to gain huge asymmetric advantage on this. I mean, I don't know what else really there is to say about it. 5 mana is the typical cost for a normal board wipe. So I think this is pretty well priced for a board wipe with asymmetric upside, really.
Yeah, I dig. I'm totally fine with white being the board wipe color. I'm also pretty into the idea of, hey, instead of just printing more 4-mana board wipes and 5-mana board wipes that say the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make some that go to different effects. Like white is a very good +1/+1 counters deck. There's a lot of things that synergize with it. There's a lot of cool things that you can just, hey, I'm going to run this board wipe, and then it's good for me as opposed to just Wrath of God everything, right? And it's a neat thing to be able to do that, and I'm kind of excited to see where they go in the future with more symmetrical board wipes that you can turn asymmetrical. But either way, damning verdict.
Clear, you're right. This is a symmetric board wipe, but the design is that you would put it in your counters deck so it becomes asymmetric. Right. You break that parity through your deck design.
So let's talk about another board wipe here that's a little bit different. Depopulate. 2 generic white, so a 4-mana sorcery that says each player who controls a multicolored creature draws a card, then destroy all creatures. So again, another symmetrical board wipe that you're going to be able to take a little bit more advantage of, but now we're also into that 4-mana cost for a sweeper, and not bad.
Yeah. I like this because this is a very bog standard whiteboard wipe with that very minor group hug upside that we like to see, right? This isn't necessarily something that's going to make help you make any deals or help save your board or anything like that, but you know what it does is like, hey, you know what? We're going to replace this card. It's going to cantrip. Obviously, you're casting this in a deck that runs multicolored creatures. And then maybe your opponents have their commander out or another multicolored creature. They draw a card off of it. It's one of those things where it stings, but we're going to put a nice bandage on it. We're going to kiss it, make it all better. It's that kind of minor, give you a little something back, little refund. Sure. I think that we appreciate that kind of effect. We're going to see it more often.
100%. And I think I like that a lot as far as a multicolored effect in a mono white card, specifically because I don't run a lot of, I haven't built a whole lot of mono white decks in my day. But white is one of those colors that I splash in a lot for my decks. It's a very good synergy and facilitate color, even if it's not something that I'm using as the primary more times than not. So.
We're getting so many interesting and cool white effects that at some point I am going to have to find a white commander that I like here. But in the meantime, if I ever build that deck, I'm going to have to put in a win con. And what better win con is this than the Halo Fountain? Look at this thing. It's 2 and a white. You probably saw this one. 3 mana for an artifact. It has 3 activated abilities. First one is white and tap. And untap a tap creature you control. Create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. It's fine. That's decent value. You can do that once a turn, churn out that value. Then we have 2 white. That's white, tap, and untap 2 tapped creatures you control. And draw a card. Now, again, this language is a little bit out there, right? You usually don't have a cost that requires you to untap a tapped creature. That's what's happening. You have to have tapped creatures, and you pay by untapping them. And then the final ability, the big one here, is white. That's 5 white mana, tap, and untap. 15 untapped creatures you control. You win the game. What a crazy ability. Mike, does this just go in every white token deck? I mean, how do you feel about this thing?
I mean, first of all, yeah, because it goes into every white token deck. It goes into every white aggressive deck I think you can make, because it's giving you the benefit of paying mana to untap creatures and getting something out of it.
Is this just like Imara's best friend ever?
I literally, so that was the first deck that I played with you at. Yes. Like Imara was the first deck that I made, and I took it apart after a certain point because it didn't have tutor effects in it, but it got into this, this is the rhythm, this is what the deck does, and it got very repetitive. But that was like 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago maybe at this point. And I'm sitting here looking at Halo Fountain and enough stuff that's come out since then. I'm like, I kind of want to build that deck again, which means this is a deck this is a card that makes me want to build a deck, because the idea of getting value out of untapping things, that's pretty cool.
This is nuts, Mike. Like, I'm thinking about this in maybe a white token deck, and then maybe you have either you've got artifact creature tokens, maybe you got some mirror, or maybe you have some other effect marked to the machines. I don't know. Maybe you've got a lot of artifact creature tokens, and then you combine Halo Fountain with Clock of Omens, and now you're tapping down all your creatures. Maybe you've got some value on that, like Cryptolith Rite or something. So you're tapping them all down for mana or whatever, and then you're using Halo Fountain to untap them all, and then with Clock of Omens you can untap. You know, this is getting complicated already, but I'm just seeing like the fact that this has the cost of untapping the creatures means that when you're tapping stuff down for value, that's priming you to take advantage of this. If you have Halo Fountain and Unwinding Clock or some other effect that's untapping your stuff, this is just going to churn out value every single turn.
It feels like a 2-card infinite combo of something fairly easy. And at the same time, I don't mind it. Normally, I get a little bit concerned about infinite combos. I don't run a whole lot of them if I can help it, because then it's, I mean, the best thing to do to win the game.
This would take a few pieces. I don't know if this would be a 2-card, right? Because even if it had one card, which it probably does, that makes this into an engine, you would then need creatures.
Right. I'm thinking of it as 2 specific pieces and then something else on the stage. That makes sense.
This is exciting. I think that white token decks are fun because white's good at tokens, although so is every other color. And I love things that sit on the board and just give you minor incremental value. You know, that's why I'm always surprised when people are like, well, Phyrexian Arena doesn't give enough value, or Bitter Blossom doesn't give enough value. It's like, hey, you know what? It's churning out a little bit of value every turn, and no one's afraid of it. This is that, but also people are afraid of it. So that's the last aspect, Mike. This is an alternate win con. Do you think that the fact that it threatens to win the game if your board gets too big makes this draw removal and is thereby not as desirable to run? Like, how do you feel about that part of it?
So here's the thing. Does it draw removal? Yeah.
Then it's good.
Because it's good. But it doesn't draw removal necessarily the second that it's not remove on sight.
Yeah, people will be watching your board very carefully.
Let's say Halo Fountain doesn't have the last ability. It doesn't have the 5 white tap it.
Worse?
Well, here's my point. If it's even a question, it's a really good card. If it was just the first thing, it would be able to fit into a good amount of decks.
Sure.
The fact that it is white card draw, because it can be, and you can get value off of it at the same time, also means that it's very good. The last part is, it's almost like winning with Approach from the Second Sun, or you know what I'm talking about. A card where if you cast it, great, gain life. If you cast it from your hand, put it back into your deck. 7th from the top, I think it is. And then if you cast it again from your hand, you win the game.
Yeah, I mean,
this is another.
This is right. The token decks can just generate tokens so freely. It's easy to make a lot of tokens.
This is a card without me making Amara. There are 3 decks I want to put this into, and 2 of them are token decks. The other one is just untapped shenanigans that I want to put this into. Yeah, because I love the idea of, all right, great, I'm going to just pay 2 mana, untap 2 things, and draw a card every turn. That's great.
This is just, it's so good. And you're right. I think that this is, if you're concerned that it's so good that it'll draw removal, then it's probably good enough to run.
Yeah. I think that's a good rule of thumb. If this is something that, if somebody else cast this, how aware of it am I, and how much am I paying attention to?
I'm very aware of it.
A lot.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there you go. Cool card. Good job. Let's talk about a card that says stop it. But in kind of a weird way. Yeah, it's interesting pacifism as far as I'm concerned. Hold for ransom. 1 and a white for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature can't attack or block and has 7 generic. Hold for ransom's controller sacrifices it and draws a card. Activate only as a sorcery.
That is a really really high cost.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it seems to me at that point you'd be struggling for you'd almost want to find a way to sacrifice your creature rather than pay that, because that's your whole turn, easy. And it might be more than your whole turn. You cast this on turn 2, turn 3. But this reminds me of another card that we got. Was it in Modern Horizons? It was another one where it enchants a commander or prevents a commander from being cast, and then they can pay. Help me out here.
I don't know off the top of my head. But I mean, we've seen this effect in white, and this is another version of it. Like, you have your passivism where it can't attack or block. You have the one that recently came out where it turns a creature into a vehicle, essentially. I like to call them the bad Darksteel mutation kind of effects, because that's the best version of this card. But it's not a bad thing to have a lot of these. And the idea, I love that this is here for us because, hey, there's some, nope, we're gonna shut that thing down. But if you pay 7 mana, you can sacrifice it, but you get to draw a card, so it's okay. There is like the littlest of cherries on top.
Right. I think the main downside of this effect is not the fact that your opponent can remove it. I think that's actually a good part of it.
Oh, for sure.
Because then that tempts them to waste an entire turn to do that, which is really negative value for them. I think the weakest part of this effect is that it doesn't lock down the abilities, or it doesn't remove the abilities from the card. So that's something you really have to pay attention to, especially on a lot of modern commanders, is attacking and blocking is important, and that does stop them from easily getting rid of this enchantment, but it's not doing the thing that stops the commander from its big scary stuff usually.
Right. I don't hate the whole. Okay. Weird question. I cast this onto an It That Betrays, so it can't attack or block.
Yeah.
Cool. They pay 7. They sacrifice the It That Betrays, but it's when an opponent sacrifices something, you get it as the controller of It That Betrays. This is actually something that makes me very excited then. All I want to do in my life with this card now is cast on an It That Betrays and just be like, how does it feel? You don't get to do it now. You don't get to do your mean It That Betrays attack.
Which is the funny thing, because if they do pay the 7, then they will have you sacrifice Hold for Ransom, and then your opponent will gain control of Hold for Ransom and can use it to enchant anything on the board.
Yeah.
Including things that are hexproof, incidentally.
Yeah, it's stupid, but I kind of dig it. Let's move into another one here. Why don't you talk to me about Jailbreak?
Yeah, this one is really interesting. I want to talk about this. This is 1 and a white, 2 mana for a sorcery. Jailbreak. Return target permanent card in an opponent's graveyard to the battlefield under their control. When that permanent enters the battlefield, return up to 1 target permanent card with equal or lesser mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is definitely not the first time we've seen this kind of effect in the game or in white, but this is a really aggressive cost, Mike, for this effect. What is this reminding me of? There's a green snake. It's Death Adder or something like that.
Okay.
Skullwinder, that's the one. Skullwinder's 2 and a green for a creature snake with Death Touch. And when Skullwinder enters the battlefield, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Then choose an opponent. That player returns a card from their graveyard to their hand. So that's to hand. This is to battlefield. I think that that wasn't really what I was thinking of. I think what I was thinking of was is that Dawnbringer? That's the one. Dawnbreak Reclaimer. Dawnbreak Reclaimer is 4 white. That's way more. 6 mana for a creature angel, 5/5 with flying. At the beginning of your end step, choose a creature card in an opponent's graveyard. Then that player chooses a creature card in your graveyard. You may return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. Now, that's a little bit of a different dynamic. And also, you can't... It's not giving you that repeated effect, first of all, right? I think that's part of why it costs so expensive is the body. So this is way cheaper at sorcery speed. And also, you're choosing what you bring back as long as the mana value is equal or less.
Right. This is
just...
It's a cool card.
This is awesome.
This is a really cool card, because the other part of it is in white, a lot of the more powerful stuff that you want to get out of there isn't always like hyper aggressive cost. You know, whether it's your stacks pieces that are a little bit smaller, whether it's getting a Revelark or something in there, or where you can just get the extra benefits out of it. Like, I like this as a 2 mana. Hey, something's going to get something supposedly better based off mana cost. But the idea that this is something where you have the full control, you get to say what it's going to be.
Yeah.
For both targets. It's pretty cool.
You know where this would be really impactful is right after a board wipe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, don't counter this, and I'll get you your coolest thing back. Stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah, this is really easy to cut
Jailbreak
deals with. I like this. The 2 mana, very nice.
2 mana, return 2 cards. One of them has to be less than yours. Cool. Not a problem with that at all. I'm excited to go back to this, because it's always a theme that I really, really like. Let's talk about Master of Ceremonies.
Oh my god.
3 generic and a white for a 3/4 Rhino Druid, which loving that.
Absolutely.
At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent chooses money, friends, or secrets. There's 3 options now. For each player who chose money, you and that player each create a treasure token. For each player who chose friends, you and that player each create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. For each player who chose secrets, you and that player each draw a card.
Perfect.
In the worst case scenario, this is a second main 4 mana 3/4 that makes you 3 1/1s. Like,
I don't know if there is the worst case scenario here is it gets removed before your upkeep.
Right? I guess
this is just the exact kind of churning value. Like, I'd love to see this.
I love this card.
I think the only limitation here is you got to play it on your main phase, and then you have to wait a whole turn for it to start happening. And if a board wipe happens, then it's gone. I really, really like this. I like the way that the players get to choose. I like that the way that you get kickbacks on everything that they choose. Everyone can get what they want. You're turning that it's really tiny value, but everybody loves those little gifts. You're starting your turn off on this really positive, benevolent note.
I mean,
Mike, I love this Rhino.
It's, again, worst case, you're absolutely right. It doesn't get to resolve it doesn't get to resolve until your turn, because it's upkeep. And I don't think I misspoke. I read it, but I think I misread it after in my brain. But okay, beginning of your upkeep comes back to your turn. What is, like, I don't know if I see this on somebody else's board. I don't know what the worst case scenario would be.
Worst case scenario
this is
for
a cool card.
you if your opponent's running it?
Yeah, because I don't know what I want to choose.
You want. I mean, what's the worst case scenario?
I know. Yeah. I don't know if I love cards like this though, where it's I mean, if you're running that, there's a good chance they're going to be taking advantage of tokens.
This is the kind of effect that makes me want to make a white deck so I can run this in it.
Yep. Absolutely. Master of Ceremonies is really cool. We like it. Also, the Rhino has a ring on its horn, and I can't decide if that's a ring or if it's a bracelet or if it's a necklace. I don't really know what a horn accessory would be.
It looks like a ring.
Otherwise. Okay, cool. Then there you go. Either way, big fan. Next card here, Skyboon Evangelist. 4 and a white for a bird advisor, 3/3 with flying. When Skyboon Evangelist enters the battlefield, support 6. That's put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 6 other target creatures. Whenever a creature with a counter on it attacks one of your opponents, that creature gains flying until end of turn. Talk to me about this one, Alex.
Yeah, this is nice. First thing that I want to point out is support is from an older set, right? I think that's is that from Battle Bond?
I couldn't tell you.
But a lot of cards in New Capenna it's almost like a Modern Horizons or Modern Masters thing where it's like only one card will have that mechanic, and they're just kind of bringing it back as a callback. So I think this is the only card in the set with support on it. But what's really nice about that is it's not just buffing your whole team. It gives you a reason to put counters on your opponent's creatures, which will then encourage them to attack in because now they have evasion. And obviously, I think that this won't necessarily work wonders by itself. I think this is part of a larger goad / encouraging or forcing combat style deck. And I think in that deck, it'll fit right in.
I mean, that and it is if somebody else is playing, I mean, it's Magic.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody isn't playing a whole lot of, +1/+1 counters in their deck.
Right.
But most people have a creature that has some kind of counters to it.
Sure.
It just happens. This is one little thing. Yeah, it's incentivizing attacking your opponents, which is great. But it's also de-incentivizing attacking you. You've got a 3/3 flyer. Great. Yeah. You can attack me. I'll be able to block it. But don't you want to be able to get through to somebody else? Skybound Evangelist is an interesting card. 5 mana is a bit more than I'm happy with.
That's the interesting thing, right? Is because it's a creature with an ETB, you can blink or reanimate it, and you'll keep getting that enormous ETB value where you're spreading all these counters around.
It's one of those. It's more mana than I'd like, but if it was less, I think you could really, really abuse it, especially in a token deck. And it's just, hey, 5 mana.
Like I said,
put a +1/+1 counter on 6 of your soldiers. By the way, they fly whenever they attack. Now
it's a bit anemic alone. This is definitely a piece in a larger,
and it's a cool
strategy.
piece. Yeah,
yeah,
I dig it. Why don't you talk to me about our next card here?
Wow, this is.
There's 2 coming up here that I'm interested in both here.
I'm really excited. Smuggler's Share is the first one here.
Yeah.
It's 2 and a white, 3 mana for an enchantment. At the beginning of each end step, draw a card for each opponent who drew 2 or more cards this turn, then create a treasure token for each opponent who had 2 or more lands enter the battlefield under their control this turn. Now, I think a lot of people, Mike, they look at this card and they're like, oh, this is just like, it's a good
balance card.
Yeah. What's the name of that? The one where draw a card when your opponent casts the second spell on each of their turns?
Oh, there's Mangara, but there's an actual card for it too as a regular creature. There are some effects like this.
Okay, so there are effects like this, yeah.
Yeah.
Why I wanted to talk about this one, because this is not necessarily a political group hug. Stacks any of that card. What this does is it synergizes with the exact kind of cards and decks that we like to play, right? Mm-hmm. We want to run effects in our decks that force opponents to draw more cards, that force opponents to ramp lands onto the battlefield. This is just stuff that we're already doing. And with this card, we're like, oh, even if nobody is drawing a bunch of cards or ramping a bunch of lands, we're going to make that happen, and then we're going to get rewards back from that. This is just, I love this card.
And here's the thing. You and I love this card because it synergizes with a lot of our playstyle.
But everybody loves this card.
We're going to give a lot of value. It's going to be really good because we're going to get extra value off the value we're giving. That's kind of the whole thing of what we like to do. But this is a 3 mana enchantment that says, hey, the things that people want to do in Magic, draw extra cards, play extra lands, and ramp, you're going to benefit off of that. As it stands, even if you played this in a regular, not necessarily a group hug kind of deck,
it's still going to proc.
It's still going to do something, and unless everybody's playing fair Magic. Guess what?
Right.
If everybody's playing fair Magic, cool. That works for you.
A lot of people are hot on this card. I think that what pushes it over the top for us is that we can make this happen. It's
extra. Yeah. We can. That's kind of what we're setting out to do.
Exactly. That's why we make our decks.
I dig this card a lot. Yeah. It's a cool thing. Also, we would be very remiss to say smuggler's share, and it's a bunch of raccoon
bunch of
bandits.
raccoons, and
it's very exciting.
I think they're looting Halo out of a cask.
I guess so. Like either way, big fan.
It. Yeah,
big fan. One way or another, everyone gets paid what they're owed. Love it. I think we're gonna try something new in this one.
Okay.
Because we're going to talk about so many cards. Normally we go at the end and then we say, what's your favorite card in the set? What do you think?
What's your favorite card of each color?
I think that's what we're going to go with.
All right.
Because this one, I'm not sure if it's my favorite card, but if it's not, it's my second favorite.
I mean, this is...
It's just fun.
Oh my God.
It's great. Tenuous Truce, 1 and a white. Enchantment Aura, enchant opponent. At the beginning of enchanted opponent's end step, you and that player each draw a card. When you attack enchanted opponent or a planeswalker they control, or when they attack you or a planeswalker you control, sacrifice Tenuous Truce.
Mike,
this is awesome.
It's like they reached into my brain and pulled a card out.
Yeah, this is great.
Mana.
It's
2 mana, and you have basically a political deal codified onto the card, which is so cool.
I even love the fact that it's at their end step.
Right.
Because if we're going super game theory about it, right?
Yeah.
It is better for you to get a card at somebody's end step and then you start your turn than for you to get a card at your end step.
Well, it's not just that. They can't get value and then immediately...
get without attacking you.
Right, exactly.
They have to honor the truce.
Exactly.
And think about it. The only time I can see somebody attacking you that you cast this on is if you are the biggest threat. Mm-hmm. And you have to be the biggest threat by a lot, because otherwise the other opponents at the table are going to be attacking you.
Right.
There are going to be lots of reasons for this player to just be like, you know what? Go ahead. Cool. I'm going to get my extra card.
As long as your Tenuous Truce remains in effect, this is just a better Phyrexian Arena.
Yeah.
For less mana in white.
Yeah, because it is a don't hurt me. It costs less. And again, a lot of people are going to look at it and say, "Oh, you know what? I don't like you getting value to your opponents." There's so much value in this card in a bunch of different ways that it actually says so on the card, and then a bunch of different ways in just the player to player relation where you go, "Hey, I think that you and I should just be chill." You know, you can cast this and then figure out who you're going to cast it on as everybody's looking at it on the table. All right, I'm going to do this. Who doesn't want to attack me and get some cards? Great. You know, I like this card a lot, and it's really simple. But that's kind of the beauty in it. Hey, don't attack me. I won't attack you. We each get a card every turn. Well, we each get a card at your end step. But you know what I'm saying? Every round.
I really, really like specifically how it is the deal on the card, right? Like, you could make a separate deal, like, okay, well, if you don't remove this, then we'll keep this up. But this is like a lot of deals involve not attacking with something big or mean or swinging out and killing somebody first. Goodness gracious, Mike. I mean, what could you possibly even say about this card? It's churning out that just a little bit of value every turn. No one wants to touch it. Your opponent probably doesn't want to break the truce until, like you said, you get either completely out of control or they do, which, I mean, the way to break the truce is right there on the card. You don't have to find a way to sacrifice it or remove it.
Right.
You can force it to be removed, which is just so cool. Mike, I'm worried if I built a white deck, it would just be crammed full of new Capenna white cards.
I mean, that's fine though, right? Just make a new Capenna white and all of the weird white alternate win conditions deck.
This is just so cool. All right,
I
Mike,
honestly think that you would have a fun time with it.
What's your favorite white card of this set so far?
So
hard to choose.
You say that. I've got it down to 2, and I've got it down to 2 by a lot. Like, Halo Fountain is really cool. I really like it. but I really, it's Tenuous Truce or Master of Ceremonies, and
Honestly.
I think I like Master of Ceremonies more.
Master of Ceremonies is a really, really nice one.
I like it just, I like, you know what, I'm going to give it to Master of Ceremonies just
Yeah.
because Tenuous Truce is really good, but it's you and one other person.
Let's just say,
whereas Master of Ceremonies, everybody.
were a legendary creature, I would probably
It'd be a
run it as
commander
my
immediately.
Absolutely.
Immediately.
Absolutely. 100%.
If you've got, if you're in a play group where you can make a non-legendary creature your commander,
That's like, can I find
I
a
would
white
recommend this one. He's
commander
fun.
that's as fun as Master of Ceremonies' effect is?
It's very cool. So that's going to do white. Let's move on to blue here. And I'll be honest. I haven't looked at all of the cards that we've got.
But
And
you know
it doesn't
this one was
matter.
in there.
This one is my favorite one. I don't know why it wouldn't be this one.
An offer you can't refuse.
The flavor is already there.
It's blue mana.
Blue. Blue. Instant. Counter target non-creature spell. Its controller creates 2 treasure tokens.
Did somebody say Swan Song 2.0?
Okay. Yeah, I like that you phrased it that way because I think this is better.
Yeah.
I really do. It hits something
more
that
things than Swan Song does.
It hits more things than Swan Song does.
Yeah.
I like the idea of I'm going to give you extra tokens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm going to give you extra treasure tokens. A bird, cool.
This is
Like,
close
I get
to like Arcane
Oh,
Denial. Like it's right there in that.
Yeah.
We were talking about this with the first whiteboard where we talked about that. I'm doing a thing to you, but I'm going to give you a little something back. And honestly, I think that stings less than just a hard counter. And I'm fine with that because this costs half the mana of a normal counter spell.
Right. Yeah. And the main reason that I love it, everything else, it's Swan Song 2.0. I know a bunch of people
gives
will
my
disagree
opponents
with me
value.
that it's better value to give 2 tokens than
a
or
bird.
I would rather have 2 treasure tokens than a bird. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
It's an uncommon.
Yeah.
It's an uncommon. It's an uncommon that's already at over like $1. It's like at $1.50, I think already.
Well, the set's not out yet, is it? It's not,
Yeah.
It's not in full release. So, yeah,
But-
I think that this will be under $1.
Yeah. And how much is Swan Song?
Oh, like $15.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is a holy cow. I can run this in a lot of decks without breaking the bank, and it's a 1 mana counter spell.
1 mana counter magic, like just holding up a single blue mana. Number one, you're only holding up 1 blue mana, which means you were able to cast more things. You were able to do more with the lens and resources you had. Number 2, who the heck is waiting and looking at your board and seeing you have 1 untapped blue mana, and they're like, dang, he probably has a Swan Song or an offer you can.
Right, exactly.
Nobody. They're looking for the 2 blue mana.
CEDH, maybe that's what you're looking for. And even then, ugh. And the part I like about it, and my biggest argument for this being a really, really good card outside of all of that, oh, you're going to give somebody 2 treasure tokens. Oh, you're going to ramp them. Well, you're taking away a spell at the same time. How many spells are you going to, how many spells are you going to counter that are going to be less than 2 mana? Only the ones that are going to win the game or devastate you.
But I want my opponent to have 2 treasure tokens.
And there's also that, where it's, hey, I feel really bad about wrecking this move that you've got, but you're going to be able to do something else cool later.
This is a spell
Look at
that
this
gives
extra
my opponent's
mana.
treasure tokens and incidentally counters a spell.
Yeah. I really like this. An offer you can't refuse. Very good. I hate to move on, but we need to move on.
We have to.
Talk to me about even the score.
Okay, yeah. Even the score, we've seen this mana cost and this effect before. Not quite like this. Blue, and X. Recognize that from Blue Sun Zenith. It's an instant that says draw X cards, but this spell costs blue less to cast if an opponent has drawn 4 or more cards this turn. Mike, this reminds me of Traps from Wales. What's Zendikar, I think?
I think so.
There was a set that had traps in it that made the spell cost like way, way less if an opponent had done something that was just over the line. And this is definitely that. You draw 4 or more cards in one turn. You're probably getting a lot of value off that. But Mike, this is the exact same scenario as that raccoon spell that we just talked about, Smuggler's Share. The raccoon spell. We don't have to wait around for our opponents to decide to wheel or draw 4. We can make that happen, plan our turn around it, and then spend 1 mana for each card all the way up. And the really nice thing about that, right, is that normally this kind of effect, we talked about it before, when you pay 3 blue and X, or whatever you're paying, if it's like Brain Geyser or 2 generic blue and X, it's really bad to choose a low value for X because then it feels like you didn't get value out of the spell. If you're paying X equals 2, now you're paying 5 mana for 2 cards. That feels bad. You don't want to do that.
Right.
You want to spend like X equals 5 and then it's 8 mana for 5 cards, which feels a little better. But with this effect, even if you choose X equals 2, you spent 2 mana for 2 cards.
Yeah. Another card where playing it in a regular deck, you're still going to be able to use it more times than not for its reduced cost. For me and you, for people who are playing value, for people who are group hug value, things along those lines, a card that is going to be used nonsensically.
Does this just replace Blue Sun Zenith in group hug decks?
I don't think it does for one reason, and that it's Blue Sun Zenith, I get to make somebody draw cards.
Right, target player draws things. Okay, yeah. Because Blue Sun Zenith is also a win con.
It is also a win con, or at least a player elimination con.
Right.
But this is still really
nice.
Good. I like even the score a lot. Let's move on to In Too Deep. Blue for an enchantment aura with split second. Love split second.
Oh, yeah.
So as long as this spell is on the stack, players can't cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. And you can enchant creature, planeswalker, or clue. Enchanted permanent is a colorless clue artifact with 2, sacrifice this artifact, draw a card, and loses all other abilities. It is no longer a creature or planeswalker. So is the reason that this says enchant creature, planeswalker, or clue because if you cast it onto a creature and then it turned into a clue, it can no longer be enchanted by this thing?
Exactly. That's exactly why. It's not because it wants you to hit a clue. It's because that when it becomes a clue, which it will immediately, you don't want the aura to then fall off.
I mean, blue for split second, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's very good.
This is... Now, we need to be careful because we haven't seen too many split second cards that are actually at sorcery speed. Have to be careful with that. When people see split second, they're like, oh, this is like
an instant
speed.
It's not.
But no, it's not. This is an aura. You can cast it on your main phase when the stack is empty. But when you cast it, nobody can respond to it.
The timing on it is really weird. But
here's the weird thing to me, because where does this sit, Mike? I'm looking at this and I'm seeing something like Imprisoned in the Moon, right? Which is 2 and a blue for an aura that can hit a creature, planeswalker, or land, and it turns it into a colorless land.
Yes.
I love that, right? Because number 1, the card loses all abilities, just like this one. Just great. But number 2, they can't easily deal with this situation. Number 1, they can't attack or block because it's not a creature anymore. But they also can't just get rid of it. Sacrificing a land isn't easy. Not everybody has spot removal on hand to get rid of the aura. But in this one, it gives them an immediate out. So I think this is less appropriate for somebody's commander, right? Because then they'll just sacrifice their commander, cast it back out. I think this is more for something else, not a commander. That's a little questionable.
I think this is I'm going to cast this card. I'm going to target one of your things so I can kill you on my turn. This is the, because what you do with this, as far as I'm concerned, on your turn, cast this, they don't get to react to it.
Yes.
Great. That thing that was a problem, unless you have a way to remove it after the fact, I have now removed this thing from being a problem.
Okay, so you're going to cast this on the turn that you win.
I think you're going to cast this to either win that turn or to have the ability to take out. Maybe you're casting this on the arch enemy, and there's something that just needs to be removed, and it's okay. Great, I'm going to turn that thing into.
But would you not just spot remove it?
If you've got spot removal, yeah.
Right.
But I think for me, it's more of I don't want to deal with a commander that has an obnoxious ability at instant speed. Great. Well, it's a clue now. It doesn't matter what you got. You know what I mean?
Right. It's not something that you can rely on sitting there because people will absolutely pay the 2 to get rid of it if they believe that they can get their permanent back.
Right. I think... I will say, doing this to a planeswalker feels really good.
Right.
Creature,
Those
like you said, if it's
back.
if you do it to a commander, yeah, they can recast it on their turn. I get it, but it's so weird. It feels like it's better with the split second, and it also feels narrower at the same time. But I do like the card. In Too Deep is pretty good.
Definitely interesting effect.
Let's talk about Public Enemy here. 2 generic and a blue, so a 3 mana enchantment aura. Enchant creature. All creatures attack enchanted creature's controller each combat if able. When enchanted creature dies, draw a card.
This is pretty great.
I like this card a lot. I misread it the first time, then I read it again, and I went, oh.
Yeah.
So this basically says...
It's like a blue goad.
It's blue goad.
Yeah.
But for everybody else.
Right.
Okay. All right. I'm going to cast this, and everybody, if you can, we're attacking this person.
Yeah. I think what you do for sure, you put this on their utility creature, the one that they really don't want to block with and lose. You don't put this on their beater.
You put this on a Seedborn Muse or something.
Exactly.
You put this on something
the thing
where
that
it's
they
like,
are not going to put in front of a blocker.
Right. This is a cool card. And uncommon, 3 mana,
a lot
enchanted
of cards
creature.
In this set, commons and uncommons, Mike.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're leaning in our direction where you don't have a lot of, a big history of mythic and rare.
Yeah.
Give lots of value to opponents' cards because
this is not
something that people
this one
lean
is not
into.
a give value to opponents' cards. This is a
right. This one is fun interaction.
Yeah.
Everybody, get them.
Really, really nice. And a cantrips.
Here's the other weird part about it, too. Who do you think feels worse? The person that this is cast on, or the people that then have no choice but to attack that person, if possible, with all of their creatures?
That is the interesting thing, right? Is with effects like this, you can kind of push that enmity from you who cast a spell on your turn, and now it's 1 or 2 turns later, and they're like, well, I got to attack you. It's like you're not thinking about Mike who cast the spell anymore. Now you're thinking about this guy who's going to swing into you for 30 damage.
Right. And who's the next one? And who's the next one?
You kind of fade into the background after this resolves and just sits there. It's like Disrupt Decorum, except has the potential to last even longer.
I like it a lot in a Spellslinger kind of deck.
Yeah.
Like in a I'm not going to run a lot of creatures, but you two are going to attack this guy.
This is also an interesting one. Like, right, if you put it on that Seedborn Muse, that valuable utility creature that they don't want to lose, they have the opportunity to put it in front of a blocker and stop the madness.
Right.
They could do it, but will they choose to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. I do dig it.
Very interesting.
I'll find somewhere to place it, just because I like it. Why don't you talk to me about our next card here?
Reservoir Kraken.
It's a lot of words for a 4-mana creature.
I mean, it's blue, so there you go. 2 blue, 4 mana for a creature Kraken with Trample Ward 2 to 6/6. Ward 2 means that any spells or abilities your opponents control that target this creature are countered unless that player pays an additional 2 generic mana. And it also has at the beginning of each combat, if Reservoir Kraken is untapped, any opponent may tap an untapped creature they control. If they do, tap Reservoir Kraken and create a 1/1 bluefish creature token with this creature can't be blocked. Now, Mike, the moment I saw this, I began thinking of those old Leviathan, the blue sea monsters of Magic's past that have really, really big bodies, huge mana costs, and huge downsides. And usually it's something like, oh, well, an opponent could like tap down some of their stuff and then you tap down the sea creature and it can attack.
Sure.
What's interesting about this is that it's a gambit now. It's not just a downside. Now it's like, okay, they can tap it down. I won't be able to swing in for a semi-hexproof 6/6 with trample. But if they do that, I get a 1/1 unblockable.
Yeah.
Maybe you could cut a deal that encourages an opponent to do that because you want the 1/1 unblockable for, say, a ninja deck or something like that. Flying Men. This is, it's not super powerful, and you may not necessarily be able to get people to be afraid of it enough that they would want to tap down their stuff to tap this down. But I think that there's definitely some play here. What do you think about this?
I love that it's at the beginning of each combat. Because if you have untapped shenanigans, that's cool.
Yeah.
But it also means that you have the ability to talk to people about like, hey, can you tap this and give me a 1/1? I'll soup it up or something and get into
like, listen, all these unblockables are not coming at you.
Or that, and just the idea of, like you said, this semi-hexproof, this Ward 2.
This is expensive to get rid of.
It's a 4 mana. It's a 4 mana 6/6 trample with Ward 2.
Yeah.
If people don't have the ability to stop it, or if you are going to specifically attack somebody who doesn't have the ability to stop it.
The mana rate for spot removal, 1 or 2 mana. Well, now it's 3 or 4, maybe even 5 mana to spot remove a single creature. People are going to be like, "Ugh, do I even want to do that?" I mean, it's only making 1/1s. This is definitely an interesting. It's flying a little bit below the radar. It is making this value that could be really difficult to deal with later in the game, or maybe you just have an attack trigger and you swing it with a 1/1 unblockable and boom, you get whatever you wanted to get. I don't know, Mike. I think this is kind of a dark horse. It's only going for 30 cents right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like it. I don't know if it's...
I like that it's a throwback to early Magic.
Yes, I do like that. I was thinking the Leviathan,
exactly.
It's huge, and like you were
Your
saying before,
tap
it's
down
huge.
To stop it from
tap it down. If it attacks, you have to pick. It's either untap
sack
or
all your lands.
If you attack, you have to sacrifice a bunch of islands and stuff. It's like, oh no, this one they can tap a creature and they'll tap it, and give you something dope.
Yeah.
No, I like it. Let's talk about another one that I'm not sure how mean it is. But I know how mean it can be. Shield Broker. 3 blues, 5 mana for a 3/4 Cephalid advisor. When Shield Broker enters the battlefield, put a shield counter on target non-commander creature you don't control. You gain control of that creature for as long as it has a shield counter on it. Shield counter, if it would be dealt damage or destroyed, remove a shield counter from it instead. It doesn't say as long as Shield Broker is on the battlefield.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is this
That's
almost insists that you blink it.
Yeah.
It says, listen, I don't care. Like, as long as that thing has a shield counter on it, it's yours. So you blink me over and over. Each time I ETB, I'm going to steal another creature. Like, this
It's messed up,
This
man.
is dangerous. This is threatening.
That's...
And the interesting thing is that when the shield counter is removed, for example, somebody does a board wipe, destroy Shield Broker, it's going to destroy all the shield counters, and then all those creatures come back under their owner's control. It's not the kind of thing where you steal it and then it goes back to the graveyard. These creatures are likely to survive whatever's going to happen to the board and then come back to their owners. So it has the potential to actually be less mean than most mind control effects.
Right. It's less mean. There is a way to get it back. It's a different way than what I think most people would be used to. got to destroy the creature that
Yeah, you spot
did
remove
it.
your
No,
own creature.
This is a guy who's signing a contract. He's buying you or he's selling you a shield. You're working for him as long as you got the shield.
Yeah, there you go.
It's an interesting little creature here. Why don't you talk to me about our next one?
Yeah. Swindler's Scheme. It's 2 and a blue for an enchantment, 3 mana. Whenever an opponent casts a spell from their hand, you may reveal the top card of your library. If it shares a card type with that spell, counter that spell, and that opponent may cast the revealed card without paying its mana cost. Mike, this is blue chaos.
Yeah.
How about this?
Yeah. So
this is really going to mess with your opponent's ability to play their game.
What is the weird artifact that you cast a spell, but you cast it and you exile it, and then you cast one of the things that was exiled?
I know the exact one you're talking about.
Infinity Pool?
Knowledge Pool.
No. Knowledge Pool.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Sorry. My work life bled into my magic life for a bit there.
So Knowledge Pool is a 6 mana artifact with imprint. When Knowledge Pool enters the battlefield, each player exiles the top 3 cards in their library, and then whenever a player casts a spell from their hand, that player exiles it. If that player does, they may cast a spell from among other cards exiled with Knowledge Pool without paying its mana cost. So basically, you put a card into the pile and you take one out, and the card that you cast isn't the one you get. This is quite a bit like that, incidentally.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of those weird effects. Like this is it's Possibility Storm, but it's your deck. It's a weird Chaos Warp effect. I like the idea of this being a enchantment where it just says, "Hey, all right, let's see if you are doing that.
Let's roll the dice to see if you get that." Yeah.
Do you want to do this instead?
Let's talk about the art briefly. It's this very MC Escher style drawing where it's a bunch of swords, and then the swords are turning into fish, which is perfect because they might be casting whatever it is, swords to plowshares. Now it's swords to fish. They got whatever creature card from the top of your library whatever they ended up getting. It's very silly.
Well, here's the thing. It's if it shares a card type with that spell, right? So is this? I'm trying to figure out what this is. Did somebody cast? Are these creatures that were we're gonna make animated swords, and now it's
maybe
here's
it's
a fish.
Wall of blades or whatever that wall is.
That could be it.
I didn't. Yeah.
Sure, I didn't know if it was a maybe it was washout that it got turned into or something. But either way,
got turned into Welding Wave.
Yeah, this is a pretty cool card. I do like Swindler's
so chaotic Scheme. That I mean, how many blue effects are like this? Very few.
Well, here was my question for you. We like chaos, but we also like to build towards that chaos, right?
Right.
What kind of deck are you running that takes advantage of Swindler's Scheme?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think that you would run a deck that either is full of crap, which would be really funny.
Right?
You keep forcing oh my god, is that a vanilla 1/1 creature? Why do I want that? What the hell? Or alternatively, you run this very broad appeal good stuff style deck so that no matter what your opponent gets, it's going to be fun. It's going to work for whatever kind of deck they have. And it's always just this wacky stuff. This reminds me of, it's a little bit like the Chaos Warp effect, like your Vivictus deck, where it's okay, we're going to remove that, but let's see what you get. This is very fun chaos.
Yeah, it's fun chaos, but it's almost on the opposite side of it, where with Vivictus or Atali or all those other things where it's I'm going to try and get cool value. I'm going to try and get extra stuff.
Yeah.
This is one where you're specifically saying, hey, there is a 1 in whatever chance that whatever you're casting is just going to be countered. Right? I also hope that whatever you get off of that isn't too good. So it's a lot of, I could see a lot of top deck manipulation.
I think
and stuff
another
like
thing
that.
you want to do is a lot of spells that have multiple card types. You run the enchantment creatures, artifact creatures, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That planeswalker that's also a creature.
I do love the idea of just like Swindler Scheme and have it out there and just on your turn having some kind of brainstorm effect where it's like, all right, I'm going to put this instant on the top of my deck every single time I can.
Yeah, I mean, whenever an opponent casts a spell, you just break out the scroll rack and be like, you're going to get this one.
Yep.
Don't leave it to chance.
It's so weird. Let's move on to our last one here because it's my favorite text.
This is
I don't know if it's my favorite card.
The wackiest common in the whole set.
I like
People
it a
are all
lot.
over it.
Witness Protection, blue for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a green-white citizen creature with base power and toughness 1/1 named Legitimate Business Person. It loses all other colors, card types, creature types, and names. I love Legitimate Business Person.
Legitimate Business Person is so good.
That's so good.
It was on the Magic subreddit New Capenna bingo card that they're like, is there going to be a card with legitimate business on it in quotes? And yes, it was. I love this so much, Mike. I think I love this more than I love In Too Deep.
I definitely
this
do.
does not allow my opponent to easily get rid of this Lignify effect.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a 1/1 creature. There's lots of ways to kill 1/1 creature. However, it's a 1 mana common.
Mike, is this just the best Lignify effect in the game?
Ooh.
Okay, here's the next question, right? It can still attack and block.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, if your other opponents aren't on the same page,
right,
then it's really easy for them to get rid of it in that case.
It depends on how broad you're going. Because Darksteel Mutation is the best overall.
Darksteel Mutation is kind of nuts.
This sticks around.
It's indestructible. Yeah.
It's staying, right? It's the best that. Yeah. However, this is really, really good. This is really, really high on that list as far as I think we're both concerned. And it's 1 mana.
Right. Think about how much value in a creature, a commander, somebody's enormous commander. You can just lock down with 1 mana, and now they have to start cutting deals with the other opponents like, hey, oh my God, can I please attack into you? And you block it, and they're like, I don't know. Like, this adds so much for so little mana.
It's good. I like any time you can have a 1 mana common that it's like, hey, this can go in this can go in just about every blue deck without too much of a problem in this format. Hey, commanders are cool. You know what's really cool? Turning them into legitimate business person.
Legitimate business people. All right, Mike, what's your favorite blue card from this list here?
I mean, here's the thing. It hurts me not to say Witness Protection. But it's an offer you can't refuse.
It's an offer you can't refuse.
It's uncommon swan song.
It's probably the best counterspell in our wheelhouse.
We've
gotten this, got Swan Song, we got Arcane Denial, and maybe 1 or 2 more. I can't recall.
Yeah,
but this is arguably the best one.
It's very good. Witness strong case for Witness Protection.
Yeah.
But no, that an offer you can't refuse is a card where like I will, if it does go up in price, that will be a card where I will buy extra packs just hoping to hit that uncommon. If that's what it turns into, because I will legitimately look through all the cards anytime I get a pack
to see if you get this.
But I'll be seeing if I get this, and then eventually I'll be like, all right, so what was the rare that I got?
This is just immediately one of the best counterspells in any political deck.
Yeah, it's very good. Let's move on to black here.
Yeah.
Bellowing Mauler. So 4 generic and a black for a 4/6 Ogre Warrior. At the beginning of your end step, each player loses 4 life unless they sacrifice a non-token creature.
This is a group slug stacks effect.
Not only that, very big fan of it specifically saying non-token creature.
Oh, yeah.
Because those effects where it's everybody sacrifice a creature. All right, great. I have
token player doesn't
soldiers. Yeah. This is cool. And I don't like it when it's hey, sacrifice this creature or discard your hand. Or, like insane stuff. 4 life.
Yeah.
Okay. I can live with that, And overall, this is just a pretty good. It's a pretty good card.
That this is a rare and it's 5 mana. It feels like an uncommon.
Well, here's my question. Okay.
Yeah.
If this is on the battlefield and you're playing it, so you play this at your end step. This is a 4/6, or not at your end step, but second main.
Yeah.
Play it. It's either has to be removed by somebody who, if we're dealing with low life, or if you're in a life gain, life loss caring about that deck. Mm-hmm. I feel like this goes in enough directions, and it is a big enough body on its own that I can justify it in a few decks.
Right.
And normally if I can justify something that's got a bunch of words on it, or at least a bunch of potential effects or a bunch of places it can go, I'm fine with that
It's really important that this is on the end step, right? Because I think that if this was on upkeep and it was, if this was upkeep,
I wouldn't like it at all. No.
Yeah. It'll just draw removal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea of somebody having to counter this,
that's a big
gives me a lot of joy.
Yeah.
That gives me a lot of joy. You know what I mean?
We love cards that are right in there. They're powerful, but they're not powerful enough that somebody who's countering it is like, yeah, absolutely. This is where my counter spell goes. That's where my spot removal is going. I'm wiping the board because of this card. If they do that,
yeah,
they feel bad.
I know why this is a rare.
Why?
At the beginning of your end step, each player,
yes,
not opponent.
Yes.
So if you need a sacrifice outlet, if you want to put stuff into your bin,
yeah,
this is already going to feed in something that you're doing, and it's going to be able to give an effect where other people.
Aristocrats decks love this.
Yeah, this is okay. Okay, I feel a little bit better about it. I was kind of going to bat and trying my best, but you know what? Reading it again with each player.
I mean, Mike, you can be honest about these cards.
Oh yeah, no, but I did like it. Like I did like it, and I was like, you know what? 5 mana for a 4/6 with conditional stuff. We'll see. But, each player. Oh,
each player.
Well, now it's more adaptable than I thought it was. Cool. Good job, Bellowing.
Here's an interesting one. Incriminate is 1 in a black. This is a common sorcery. Choose 2 target creatures controlled by the same player. That player sacrifices one of them.
Love it.
They're making interesting decisions. Now, you have to make them have to make a decision, right? If you just choose like, oh, here's your best thing and your second best thing, obviously they're going to sacrifice the second best thing. You need to make this something where they're like deliberating. Unless you just don't care.
Maybe. I also like the idea of, because it's a sacrifice and this is only 2 mana.
Yep.
Yeah, if I've got another targeted removal, great. I'm going to hope that I get rid of the thing that is more difficult for me to get rid of. If not, it's a 2 mana spell that I made them sacrifice, and I'm going to hold on to my other targeted removal. I feel like the floor on this card is very, very, very high. Maybe the ceiling isn't too crazy, because you still have to have 2 respective targets on the same player.
Yeah. I mean, it is spot removal
one of them can't be too obvious
for one creature,
right?
But the fact that it's a sacrifice effect kind of elevates it a little.
I dig it.
Yeah.
It's not amazing, but it is pretty good.
It makes players make interesting choices, and that's one thing that we do care about here. Yep.
Good job, Incriminate. Yay for interesting comments. That's always a good benefit. Lethal Scheme. 2, black for an instant with Convoke. Your creatures can help cast the spell. Each creature you tap while casting the spell pays for 1 or 1 mana of that creature's color. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Each creature that convoked Lethal Scheme connives. Now, this is the first time we're talking about connive. Mm-hmm. So connive is draw a card, then discard a card. If you discard a non-land card this way, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature.
This is an interesting effect.
Yeah.
I think that what has to be said, right, is the basic value for the basic effect that you're running this for, which is destroy target creature, planeswalker at instant speed. However, we have significant upside on that. Number one, if you have 4 creatures, 2 of which are black at least, you cast this for 0 and tap 4 creatures, which is really good, first of all. And even if you can get a discount down to 2 or 1
Call
mana.
it 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have a couple of creatures lying around in your black deck, this is going to be super cheap. We love that. And then we have another upside. We have each of those creatures that convoke connives, which is interesting because usually when you convoke, you want to convoke with your tokens, your low-value creatures. You're tapping them down. That means you don't get to use their activated abilities. You don't get to attack or block with them. But this encourages you, Mike, to maybe choose some of your better creatures to convoke with so they can get a +1/+1 counter.
Sure.
And you're also looting.
Yeah, I was going to say the looting is the thing that I get excited about. Because I see this, again, in another, in a token deck or something where it's like, hey, I'm going to have a good amount of creatures over here, and I'm going to use them to do other stuff than I normally would with just regular creatures. But it doesn't have to lean that way, which is the cool part, You
definitely want to care about +1/+1 counters to run this card, I think.
I could see that. I could see that being the big benefit, but at the same time, I just even being in black and being able to draw and discard to cast a spell at reduced cost because you're using creatures to do it. I in almost every one of my black decks, I like having stuff in my bin.
You know where this would
like having stuff in the graveyard. I dig this.
Really effective is if you're in a black tax or stacks deck where you're making everything cost a lot more mana. And now, even though this costs maybe now it costs 6 mana.
Sure.
For you, that's just tap down some more creatures, and that's getting more value off of the spell because now you connive more. You get more +1/+1 token or counters. Like with a tax effect, this card becomes better.
I do dig it. It's interesting. This will never be a spell that you're ever going to want to pay for ever.
No, never. But that's convoked, right? Convoked spells typically are overcosted because creatures pay for them.
It's a good
I love Convoke. It's one of my favorite mechanics.
It is a good one. Let's talk about our next one here. Why don't you make an example for me?
Sure. Make an example is 3 in a black, 4 mana for a sorcery. This is great. Each opponent separates the creatures they control into 2 piles. For each opponent, you choose one of their piles. Each opponent sacrifices the creatures in their chosen pile. And of course, piles can be empty. This is definitely not the first time we've seen this effect, but we still love to see it, right? We love making our opponents make difficult and interesting decisions because this is absolutely a slug and or stacks card, right? It's part of a board wipe, but your opponents are doing part of the decision making and you're doing part of the decision making, right? They're trying to construct piles in a way that makes it difficult for you, that you don't take too much value from them. You're trying to force them to make that decision, and they're trying to force a decision on you where you'll give them a favorable pile. You could also cut a deal with them such that they can put them all in one pile and then an empty pile, and you choose the empty pile for them because you cut some kind of deal beforehand. I love this kind of effect, Mike.
It's a 4 mana. It's so good.
Yeah.
Like I feel like this is one that is slept on because worst case scenario, you're going to have the ability to get rid of everyone's best thing.
Right.
Because it's sacrifice again.
It is.
It's
indestructible.
Leaning into sacrifice instead of destroy is very, very cool. And 4 mana for that effect, pretty solid.
Yeah.
I guess, like, for as much as we're talking about how tokens and everything, maybe this one doesn't matter as much for those. But other than that, this is always going to be pretty good on something. And your board is fine.
Right. I think that when you cast this, your opponents immediately begin thinking, okay, what's the best pile I can make that the caster of this won't choose?
Right.
Like, there's interesting decisions are happening here. That's what I love about this game.
But the one thing that I can find an issue with this card is if we are using it the way that you and I would prefer to, where we're going to
cut a deal and it's an empty pile.
Man, it's going to be a really long... That spell is going to take a while to resolve. It is.
How do you mean?
Because you're going to cast it, you're going to make a conversation about it, you're going to get everybody to separate their cards into their piles,
right.
Then you're going to get those piles, then you're going to decide on it, then they're going to sacrifice it and resolve all the stuff from those things dying. So it's a very cool card.
You're right, it does take a while to resolve, but
it might be a card where it's a 6-minute turn or a 6-minute spell, but it's still very good.
It's warping the entire game, right? Like, your decisions are being made that will determine who is out front when the spell resolves. So I think that's this is the kind of effect I love.
Oh, I really like it. It's just, like, again, my biggest problem with it is it's powerful enough to take a lot of time.
Yeah.
Like, oh no.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about Swindler's Scheme, which is, hey, by the way, anytime somebody casts a spell, we're going to have to do some things. So, all right. Make an example is pretty good.
I want to talk about a card that I'm extremely excited about. Okay.
Really?
Yeah, because I think that you're also excited about this. Maybe not. We'll see.
I think we're excited for two different reasons. Okay. Yeah, go ahead and hit me with Protection
Racket. Oh my gosh. 2 and a black. It's 3 mana for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, repeat the following process in turn order. So for each player, you'll do this whole thing. Reveal the top card of your library. That player may pay life. Scryfall says pay life. It's may pay life. Equal to the card's mana value. If they do, exile that card. Otherwise, put it into your hand. So, at the beginning of your upkeep for each opponent, you'll reveal the top card of your library. That player will choose whether or not they'll pay X life, where X is that card's mana value. If they do, it's exiled. If not, you put it into your hand. You draw it. Couple things. First one is, obviously, lands. You get exiled for 0 life. Second thing is that this probably isn't the best for a fragile combo-focused deck that needs specific pieces to win.
No.
Because if a player exiles that piece, then you might not be able to win. So this is a lot better in a deck with a more generic win con, maybe like Combat or Mill, something that churns value over time to win and doesn't need any particular one card to do it. But the third thing is that in some decks, it doesn't even matter which one they pick. For example, in Belbay, which is a deck that I made last year, it doesn't matter if they pay the life or if they let me draw the card. I'll take the card draw, and I'll also take them losing life because then that's mana. And that's not the only deck that works like that, Mike. Talk to me.
So here's what the thing.
Yeah.
I like this card as an idea. And I like the principle of giving somebody. I like giving my opponents choices,
right? And
games within the game. It's the fun interaction stuff. And then there were so many downsides for me on this card, as far as the if I'm playing, I'm trying to play a lot of value, right? In my black decks, I don't want to exile stuff. I don't want to go through my life. I don't want, and I'm not, I'm not a combo player, so I'm not worried about that so much. But it was, oh man, if they're going to pay life for it, that means they're probably getting rid of something really cool, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought about it, and I kind of, I'm not really big on this card.
I think higher your average CMC, the better this card becomes.
Well, and then I thought about this in Vivictus.
Yeah.
And I went, oh.
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool. And then I thought about it in the Thantis deck that I just made.
Yeah.
And I was, oh, that would be pretty cool.
How many Jund decks do you have?
Well, those two.
Okay.
But then I also thought about it, and I have a Liaisa, the first one. Spells cast make opponents lose or make everybody lose 2 life whenever they cast a spell. I went, oh, that would actually be pretty interesting. This one,
it's value, but it also makes your deck more fair, which is really interesting dynamic. A lot of people look at this are like, oh, that's suboptimal because it's removing my pieces from my deck. They're going into exile. I can't get them.
Right.
But if you think about it as, number one, your opponents can veto cards out of your deck if they think they're too strong. And number two, to do that, they have to lose life, which is value that you can take advantage of.
If not for the land part of it.
Yeah, the land part hurts. But
if not for that, I'd be totally into it.
Some decks don't care about that. For example, Belbay doesn't need a bunch of lands. If the player pays the life, that even if a land got exiled earlier, I still get mana.
And that's where I got to with this card eventually. I think this is a really cool card in the places where it works really, really well.
Yeah, it's not for everyone.
I'm not going to run this in my Marin deck. However, in my Vivictus deck, absolutely. And that just, hey, look at the top card.
The interesting thing about this card is how many people are discussing and arguing about it. No one can decide whether it's good or bad.
Yeah. I think the answer is, well, what are you playing it in? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't super thrilled about this card to begin with. And then I warmed up to it. And then even in this conversation, I warmed up to it even
I'm warm on this card.
It's a good card. Yeah. Speaking of being warm on cards, that's what we've got for black. What is your favorite card in here?
That's a good question.
Because I'm pretty happy with Make an Example.
I think Protection Racket or Make an Example.
Yeah. Protection Racket, I wouldn't put it in everything. But in the cards in the decks where I do put it in there, I think I really like it. I can Make an Example in just about any black deck and feel really good.
The card that I want to compare Protection Racket to is a Stacks piece or a Slug piece. And I realize that Slug and Stacks are not the same, but they do have some overlap.
No, but they do.
The card that I thought of when I saw that card was a Zur's Weirding, which is 3 blue for an enchantment. It's 4 mana. Players play with their hands revealed, so it's a telepathy effect. If a player would draw a card, they reveal it instead, and then any other player may pay 2 life. If a player does, put that card into its owner's graveyard, otherwise that player draws a card. Now, there are definitely similarities and differences here. The similarity is that players can veto cards from being drawn. The difference is that the amount of information is less. Number one, this is not happening on every single draw, so the amount of time that is going to get sucked away by the card is a lot higher for Zur's Weirding than it is for Protection Racket. Okay. And number two is that you get a lot more value out of Protection Racket than you do for Zur's Weirding. Zur's Weirding's main effect is to grind the game to an absolute halt and make everybody start taking snaps and bites at each other and eventually just go for each other's throats and veto every single card until they can't pay life anymore.
Right.
Protection Racket is a much more one-sided card that, again, is a lot less about locking somebody out and a lot more about seeing what can happen when you allow your opponents to make those vetoes or allow you to draw a card or what have you. I think that they're similar, but they're different. What do you think about that?
I mean, Protection Racket is fair.
Yeah.
That's where I would go with
fair.
it. Like, Protection Racket is fair. It is a fair card. It's 3 mana for an enchantment that says at my upkeep, so it has to come back, but I don't know that this is getting removed unless everybody's life is basically at like 2. That says, hey, look at this card. Discuss amongst yourselves whether it's worth it for it to be removed by paying life equal to its mana cost. And that's it.
They're making those decisions.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. Again, I'm leaning into Protection Racket.
Okay.
There's weird link.
So you prefer Make an Example, though?
Yeah, I think I prefer Make an Example because I don't know a deck where I wouldn't want to run it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
The interesting thing about Make an Example is that if it read each opponent, or for each opponent, choose a creature, that player sacrifices that creature, it's always going to do at least that much. If there's one creature that each opponent has that you need to get rid of, you'll get rid of it, even if they keep everything else. But more than likely, you're able to get more than that.
I think my new reason for is a card good or is a card worth including is if I compare it to the standard.
Yeah.
The gold standard of that type of effect in that color, are there times where I would prefer to cast it instead of the gold standard? Mm-hmm. Toxic Deluge is the gold standard as far as black removal or board wipe cards.
This is not really in the same. I don't know if I would. I mean, it is kind of a board wipe, right? It's very similar.
But hear me out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Toxic Deluge is board wipe.
Yeah.
It's almost targeted removal without choosing the targets.
Kind of, yeah.
But I'm never going to be hurt by this.
Right.
So there are times where I need to I need to get rid of a bunch of stuff. But if I Toxic Deluge, I'm actually going to be setting myself back a lot. This will never set me back. So I think I like
the asymmetric effect is very powerful here.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's very good. Okay, cool. Let's move on to red. And I think that's what we're going to finish our part 1 episode with.
Yeah. Because
it'll be more than half the cards. However, when we move on to the multicolored cards,
those are all the commanders.
There's all the commanders, and man, there's a lot of words.
Talking a lot about those.
Lot of words.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and do red and start with Audacious Swap. 3 and a red for an instant. Casualty 2. As you cast this spell, you may sacrifice a creature with power 2 or greater. When you do, copy this spell, and you may choose a new target for the copy. The owner of target non-enchantment permanent shuffles it into their library, then exiles the top card of their library. If it's a land card, they put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, they may cast it without paying its mana cost.
It's a new take on Chaos Warp.
This is a crazy take on Chaos Warp.
It's pretty great.
Because here, they are going to get to do something cool.
Yes. Unless Chaos Warp, where it must be a permanent, and if it's a land, it's blah, and if it's an instant sorcery, they're screwed. This will always hit something.
Yeah. Like, okay. The worst case of anything. Well, I mean, heck, maybe, but I'm fine with that. If I'm removing something scary and it turns into a land, cool. If you're the person this is cast on, I guess you just don't want to hit like a counter spell. Like you don't want to hit an instant.
Yeah, that would.
And go, all right, okay, that's not very good.
You don't want to hit, a counter spell or anything that requires interaction. That would
suck.
But that's better than not getting any instance ever.
Yeah. This is good.
Let's compare this to Chaos Warp, because Chaos Warp it's 2 in a red, right? And this is 3 in a red. Mm-hmm. But this one also lets you copy the spell if you sacrifice a creature power 2 or
sacrificing a power. Yeah. So Chaos Warp, shuffle a permanent into the deck, reveal the top card if it's a permanent, and put it into play.
Right.
Audacious Swap, shuffle a Audacious Swap, shuffle possibly 2 non-enchantment permanents. So a little bit more limited on the targets.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It can't hit enchantments because it's red.
Right.
But
and you're definitely getting it.
Right?
Yeah, it can. You whatever you reveal, you have the ability to do it. Now, whether or not you have a viable target,
that's the other thing is Chaos Warp. Good use case. I use it this way all the time. I hit my own thing, usually a token, and see what I roll. I think that's also viable here.
Yeah, it is good. I like Audacious Swap. I also like the fact that if you copy it, you're casting them separately, so then you're shuffling twice. So you're not going to reveal the same card on. If somebody gets burned on a counterspell on the first one, well, I guess if they got burned on the counterspell, they could counter the second whatever. The point is that you're not going to get burned twice by the same reveal unless you have really, 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 really bad shuffling luck. So overall, I like the card. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this is shuffling something into an opponent's library. It's possible they never see it again.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's move on to a very exciting card. Life of the Party. Talk to me about this one, Alex.
Life of the Party for 3 and a red. That's 4 mana for a creature elemental. It's a 0/1 with first strike, trample, and haste. Fascinating.
Yep.
Whenever Life of the Party attacks, it gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. Token decks love it. When Life of the Party enters the battlefield, if it's not a token, each opponent creates a token that's a copy of it. The tokens are goated for the rest of the game.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So you're going to give every other player a X1, where X is the number of creatures they control, only when it's attacking, and it has first strike, trample, and haste.
And it's goated.
So it always has to attack if it can, and it always has to attack someone other than you if it can.
Yep.
I mean, this just goes in every forced combat deck ever, I think.
This is a dumb card.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
Very fun.
Here's the thing. You said earlier, like, token decks love this. Like, you know what? They do. But I love other people's token decks. I love it.
Yeah, other people's token decks love this. Exactly.
Like I'm not going to put this into every token deck that I make, but you keyed on it. Forced combat.
Yeah.
I definitely want to put this into Thantis. I think that's hilarious. You know what? Everybody having this. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. Life of the Party. It's adorable.
It's awesome.
It's Rite of the Raging Storm, but interesting even more.
Which is fun. It like Life of the Party, it's literally the elemental essence of a party in a being. It's very silly.
Got the coins, got all the swirls, that they're just having a
fun
good
card.
time. I am almost a little disappointed that the text, there is as much card text as there is, because I really would like to know what the flavor text for Life of the Party would be.
Yeah.
As an 0/1 elemental that gets bigger the more people there are. But yeah, it's a cool card.
Yeah, even the extended border without the reminder text doesn't have it.
Right. Let's talk about Seize the Spotlight here. 2 and a red for a sorcery. Each opponent chooses fame or fortune. We love those words.
We love this effect.
Each opponent chooses. Each player votes. All of that. Yeah. Great. Each opponent chooses fame or fortune. For each player who chose fame, gain control of a creature that player controls until end of turn. Untap those creatures, and they gain haste until end of turn. For each player who chose fortune, you draw a card and create a treasure token. This is a cool card.
I'm a fan.
If as long as you're playing this into a board where everybody has a creature,
cast this into a full board. Yeah.
This is great.
I like it.
Because at that point, I mean, heck, cast it, pay for it, get the treasures back to pay for it, and draw 3 cards. Awesome. Grab a creature that is a problem and attack in with it and sacrifice it.
Yeah, then sacrifice it. Yeah, exactly.
Seize the Spotlight is a very good card.
I like it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a big fan of anything where I see the card and immediately go, oh, this is going into this deck. Brian loves this card.
Yes,
Brian
does.
says, yes, come here.
Give
me some things to throw.
Chuck it at you. There we go.
I like the idea of, hey, I'm gonna cast this spell. I need you to pick fortune so I can get the treasure token to pay for Brian to throw this creature at this guy.
It's really funny. Like, you do it on Brian, you're just gonna draw 3 cards and get 3 treasures because no one's gonna want to give you anything.
Yeah. If you have something on board that would be a problem, great. Here is your
then you just refunded the cost of the spell and netted 2
and drew
cards.
3 cards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, netted 2. Yeah. It's a good card.
Yeah, I like
this one a lot.
Let's talk about an interesting new board wipe, Structural Assault.
Yeah.
3 red for a sorcery, 5 mana. destroy all artifacts, then structural assault deals damage to each creature equal to the number of artifacts that were put into graveyards from the battlefield this turn. Yeah, usually the go-to for destroy all artifacts would be Vandal Blast, but this makes a really strong case because this is going to hit all artifacts and then potentially destroy almost all creatures.
Yeah. So 5 mana, it's a different breakdown with it being 2 red and 3 mana. But I mean, 5 mana to destroy all artifacts. You're hitting your own stuff. That's a little unfortunate side effect.
That's the thing. You use your artifacts to pay for it, then cast this, and then you lose the artifacts, and then you're in red, so you probably bring them back.
Yeah. So it's a good synergy. The idea of destroy all artifacts, then do all the damage and probably wipe the board after that.
Yeah.
It's pretty solid.
It's, destroy all artifacts and basically destroy most creatures, depending on how many artifacts you hit.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing, right, is that you can figure out which and how many creatures you're going to hit before you cast it simply by virtue of looking at the board.
Right.
So you can definitely cast this at an opportune time. Usually it's white that gets this kind of combined board wipe option.
Yeah. That's actually where I was going to go, because this is it is circumstantial.
Yeah.
Right? But I kind of like that for red. As far as a board wipe for red, if it's going to get rid of creatures, I like the idea of it doing damage because red. If it's going to destroy artifacts, cool, red. Combine them into the same thing. All right, I'm down for that. Even as just a 5 mana destroy all artifacts, that's not great.
Right.
But it's not bad by any means.
That's the thing, right? Is Vandal Blast, let's pull it up here. Vandal Blast is a single mana, and it's modal, so you can overload it right. Single mana for a sorcery, destroy target artifact you don't control. Or you can pay the 4 and a red, and then you'll destroy each artifact you don't control. Sorcery speed.
Right.
And then we also have, of course, the red God King of Boardwives, Blasphemous Act, which is 8 and a red. For sorcery, deals 13 damage to each creature. This spell costs 1 less for each creature on the battlefield. So obviously those cards are very aggressively costed. Vandal Blast is asymmetric. But to get those effects, you need 2 separate cards. Right. I don't think red has too many effects that are going to do specifically destroy all artifacts and then blow up a bunch of creatures.
Right. I like it.
Yeah.
It's not a, like you said, it's an interesting take, I don't know if it's going into a ton of different decks for me, but I do like it. Yeah. And that's good enough. Yeah. I mean, it made us talk about it, right? Let's talk about Turf War.
I'm excited.
4 and a red for an enchantment. When Turf War enters the battlefield, for each player, put a contested counter on target land that player controls. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to a player, if that player controls 1 or more lands with contested counters on them, that creature's controller gains control of one of those lands of their choice and untaps it.
This is interesting. I like that. You want to talk about forced combat. Do you even need to force players to contribute to combat when this is on the field, right? Look, there's a Gaia's Cradle, there's a Dark Depths, there's Sarah's Sanctum. Everybody has one land that's juicy, and you're not destroying it. You're just making it up for grabs.
Right.
Interesting effect.
I'm finding out something about myself, and that is I love cards that punish people who don't play creatures. I maybe it's just like the kid in me learning Magic and combat is so cool and make big creatures that are terrible, but it's fun because swing these big things, battle cruisery stuff. Man, I the second that somebody says storm count 1, I usually get like really uncomfortable for the kind of thing that's going to happen. So the idea of, hey, I hope you've got something to attack with. Here you go, Turf War. We're going to be exchanging some lands. Yeah. Let's go. Even the idea of like, hey, I'm going to put this on mine. I'm going to hit you with a 1/1 to gain the extra land.
Yeah.
You can take it back on the next turn. We'll just keep swapping some lands back.
I mean, that's the other interesting thing, Red, is that the trigger is whenever a creature deals combat damage to a player. So if you deal combat damage to the same player with 3 creatures, you'll gain control of 3 contested lands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that this is another one that would be really nice to start copying and or blinking.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't care about which turf
Until
war it is. It just cares about contested counters.
Yep. I do like the blink turf war. And then by the way,
yeah,
the amount of humor that they've put into this set as far as like, no, this is exactly what this is,
right.
And this is exactly how it'll work. This is a turf war. If you hit somebody,
you take their land.
You get to take their turf.
This reminds
is
me
great.
of Coveted Jewel.
Yeah. I dig that. Turf war is a very cool card. Let's move on to what I never thought I would ever say before.
A fair Praetor.
Let's look at the cool Praetor.
Yeah.
This is a fun card.
Heretic Praetor, 3 red, 5 mana for a legendary creature, 5 Rexian Praetor. It's a 4/4 with haste. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, the next time they would draw a card this turn, instead they exile the top card of their library. They may play it this turn. This forcibly turns every player's normal card draw on their draw step into impulse draw. This changes everybody's playstyle forcibly. You aren't just getting a card each turn. You must use that card this turn or you lose it. Otherwise, you lose it and it's in exile. You never see it again. So even though it's a very seemingly minor, for a Praetor, obviously, Praetors have these really impactful effects. Although Old Urabresk was probably one of the most fair original Praetors. The other ones, though, Jin Gataxias, like these have reputations for being some of the least fair, most oppressive creatures in the whole game. And Mike, this one seems downright fair, but at the same time, you're still poking them right in the shins.
Oh, yeah. No, it's still a detriment. Don't get me wrong. Exile is a public zone, correct?
Yes. If the card's face up in exile, which it is by default, then any player can look at it at any time.
So here's the thing. I kind of love this too.
Player reveals that card.
Because everybody's revealing the card that they're getting.
Right.
Now, this is better for you, obviously, because, cool.
You get an
great.
impulse
I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm getting impulse draw. It's extra. Everybody else, hey, here's your card for your draw phase. Ooh, what you get? And then it's almost kind of like this cool, not rattlesnake effect, but it is kind of a cool effect of everybody's gonna see it. So let's see what's coming. Let's see what you got. And like doing the puzzle of, is this something that you're going to be able to use this turn or not? And I dig it. It's not the most powerful effect.
No.
But it's fun.
That's the thing though, right?
And it's not a Praetor. I'm down.
It is a Praetor. And this is probably just about one of the only Praetors other than original Urabrask that you can play it and the entire table doesn't go like, well, now we got to kill Mike.
Yeah. I'm looking at this and I feel like I read it several times to make sure that it's not whenever they draw a card.
It's only
exile,
the first
you know what I mean?
Draw
it's only the first.
on each of their turns. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a fan of this. Good job, Urabrask. Thanks for not being like the worst or some version of the worst.
Okay, so help me out here with this Urabrask artwork.
Yeah.
This is card what's the actual? This is a 129. If you're looking, because there's 4 versions. Obviously, there's a lot of versions.
Sure.
But 129, the standard version. What in the heck is going? Like, what part is his head? It looks like he's got some claws here, some wings here, got a tail over there. Like, what is this? Where's Urabrask?
So I think what's happening is we've got the claw up top, and we've got the claw below.
Oh, he's
right?
leaping.
He's leaping. And this is like a top down because he's got his neck facing over.
Okay,
so
I'm seeing it now. And he's got like this blade almost fused with the flesh of his arm. It looks like almost...
Yeah.
Oh, it's...
His axe wrist thing?
Yeah, what is that?
It's pretty sick.
Yeah.
It's pretty sick. I dig it.
Interesting card.
Yeah, it's cool artwork. Thanks for making something terrifying, but cool. What's your favorite card out of red here?
Okay, that's a great question. Let's take a look at
Yeah.
this here. I think Audacious Swap, because I think this card I'm actually going to run. There's a lot of cards in this set that seem tailor-made for my decks. And this one, I think you know what I'm about to say. Sekuar, the Death Keeper. This is perfect because number one, it's on theme with you lose something and you gain something. But number two, I can copy the spell by sacrificing something, which is also extremely on theme for him. We love sacrificing in that deck. And this is just a fun and novel form of Chaos Warp, an effect that I love, and I know you love it too. My pick is Audacious Swap.
Yeah, the other part of it I didn't think about before was the idea of targeting your own stuff.
Yes. Always a
Audacious
strong
Swap.
option, especially if it's a token and you're behind. You're like, man, I got to get something going. Let's gamble. Let's get rid of this thing. Let's see what I get.
I think my heart wants to go Turf War, but my brain wants to go Seize the Spotlight. Seize the Spotlight is just going to give you a good amount of value.
Turf War is
unless
something
you're
that's just
casting
going
it
to be
at
going
nothing.
on.
It's a world enchantment,
Right.
as far as I'm concerned. It's just cool. Here we go. Let's do some swapsies. Let's do some fun
The
stuff.
effect is so minor that I wonder if it wouldn't have been okay to say that those creatures have that ability for as long as they have that counter. But as it stands, if you remove Turf War, then nothing happens anymore.
Right. No, I dig it. It's another one of those. It's not so powerful that it bothers me,
Right. That's the thing.
but
right, is that
it adds a cool facet.
Someone will swing
Yeah.
in with 3 unblocked, get 3 lands, and then blow up Turf War.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, fair enough. Good call. The floor for Turf War is pretty low. It can be pretty
Right.
messed up. Okay. Well, here's the funny thing. That's actually going to do it for part 1 of our set
We
review
have
here.
a whole bunch of other cards.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of green because green wasn't super overall friendly to everybody on its own.
Yeah,
this-
I mean, again,
this
our set
time.
reviews are a little different from normal
Yeah.
set reviews. And Mike obviously knows that, but for our listeners, our set reviews are about the cards that we love, about group hug groups like Stacks, Chaos, Politics, and thank Wizards for this set that has more political cards
Yeah,
than any set in recent memory, and we've had some doozies in the past year or two. I'm really excited for our next part of the set review when we're going to be talking about all these awesome political commanders, Mike.
yeah. No, this is we did more than half of the cards, and I still feel like this is going to be the shorter
next
episode of the
might be
two.
even longer than this one.
Yeah.
Who knows?
But in the meantime, in case you're listening to this in 2 different breakup times and you're giving yourself a little bit of time in between, hey, Alex, where can people find you on socials if they have any questions about
Mike,
any
you
of these
can
cards or anything along those lines?
Catch me on Twitter at Lappermedic, LAPPERMEDIC. If you saw some of these cards or maybe some other new Capenna cards and you thought, oh my gosh, I can just win the game on the spot, 2-card, 3-card, 4-card, 5-card combo, whatever ridiculous win con you're thinking of, we would love to have you at commanderspellbook.com, where we are indexing all sorts of Commander and Singleton format combos, and we have plenty of new Capenna ones that you can check out. That is my other project that I'm currently shilling for. So yeah, you can catch me on Twitter or Commander Spellbook.
There you go. Everybody, if you heard us talk about any of these cards and you want to pick them up because they are 15 tokens, win the game, exchange lands, or I don't know, what's something else crazy that we talked about? Giving somebody treasures so they don't get to
Changing
cast their...
somebody's sword into a fish.
Yeah, lots of cool stuff here. If you want to buy any of those cards, deck boxes, sleeves, etc., you can support us by going to bit.ly/EDH_social. We'll put a link in our show notes. That'll take you to our affiliate link for a TCG player. You'll be able to get all the stuff that you wanted to get anyway, but you'll be able to help out the show while you do so. You can also, if you want to be part of the show, go to our Discord link. Join our Discord. There you're going to be able to see all of us react to the spoilers as they're being revealed, talk about cool decks. How do we turn this deck that I have into a group hug deck, stuff like that. We're interacting with our Discord as much as we possibly can, and it's a good time in there.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, I'm in a lot of Magic servers, Discord servers. I'm sure people are in at least one Magic community, whether that's on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Discord, Slack, wherever you go to see spoilers.
Yeah.
You're probably talking about spoilers, and you're seeing these fun political cards, group hug cards, cards that you love in your heart because you know that you can have more people at the table, have more fun, and enjoy the game of EDH. But other people don't share your excitement. Join us. Yeah. That's what we do.
Yeah. Or you see somebody talking about those cards and those reveals, and they say, this card's junk. Come to our Discord so we can help you out with that debate. Yeah. We can help you show them.
Tenuous Truce is crap. Oh, my friend. Let me tell you how wrong you are.
You can also go there to talk to our honorable judge, Alex, ask a question if you've got some judge questions. You can also follow us on Twitter at EDH_social or email us at thesocialcontractedh@gmail.com. We'll be back really, really soon with the second half of this set review.
Stay tuned.
We're going to go into all of the colors and colorless. So talk to you soon.